Hello again. In this section, what we're going to start doing is looking at how to name an organic chemical. And we're going to be looking at some simple chemicals that will get more in depth, but here we're just learning the basics for the moment. We're looking at naming alkanes, alkenes, and alkynes. Now, when we are doing naming of organics in general, a lot of it is determined by what's the prefix or prefixes, because there might be more than one, and what are the suffixes. The prefixes, generally speaking, give us an indication of how big a chain is, how many carbons are in the chain that we are looking at. The suffixes name the kind of organic chemical that we're looking at, what kind of functional group is present. And with that information, just by the name, we should be able to draw up the structure of the chemical that we're looking at, or vice versa. If we have the structure of a chemical, we should be able to name it so that other people understand what we're talking about. So, for example, if I were to draw up an organic chemical, I'm just going to draw up a straight chained molecule with no double bonds, and it's going to be a chain of 5 carbons. So, based on what we've looked at so far, we're going to be drawing up that structure just based on that description. So it's a 5 carbon chain that I said that we were working with. There are no double bonds, it's only single bonds. So far I've drawn up sort of the skeleton or the spine of our straight chain. We've got all of the carbons, our 5 carbons all in a row. We then have to follow our rule of 4 and our rule of 1. So remember that carbons have 4 bonds, and our hydrogens have 1 bond. Whoops, excuse me. Carbon has 4, hydrogen has 1, and that's got to do with our Lewis structures, where the carbon has 4 electrons all around and the hydrogen only has 1. So to fill everything else out, everything has to be bonded to a hydrogen. Now, a bit of a short and sweet rule. A lot of the time, if we're working with single bonds, as I have on my carbon, you can just sort of fill in all of the blank spaces and you end up with 4 bonds all around. But it is definitely something that you need to double check. So I've got 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 around every single carbon. We're happy. But now the question is, how do we name the thing? So it's the name of this organic chemical is going to be made up of a prefix and a suffix. The prefix is going to tell us the size of the carbon chain. So we already said that it was a chain of 5. The prefix here is pent, similar to pentagon, a 5-sided shape. So pent will be our prefix. That's come from over here. And then for the suffix, we have to look at what functional groups are present. If it's only a straight chain and it's only made of single bonded carbons, then it is an alkane, just like we were talking about with our functional groups in the last section. The suffix that we use is ane, just like the end of the name of the group, alkane. So we bring in that suffix to the end of the name. Pent, ane is the name. So the name of this chemical is simply pentane. Another example for you below, I'm going to be drawing up an alkyne. There's going to be a triple bond present, and there will be a carbon chain of 3 carbons. So a carbon chain of 3 carbons. I think I drew this in the last example actually, but that's fine. We're going to name it now. So we have a chain of 3. There is a triple bond present. We then have to fill out the carbons with hydrogens. So here the first carbon, carbon number 1, might actually label them for this. Carbon number 1 has 3 bonds already present. So I only need to put in 1 more hydrogen on the outside. Carbon 2 has 4 bonds all around it. It doesn't need any more hydrogen. Carbon number 3 has 1 bond present. We're going to have to fill it in with 3 more hydrogens to make sure that there's 4 bonds there. So that's our structure drawn up. But now the question is, again, what is the name of this chemical? So first off, we pick our prefix based on the chain size. So there are 3 carbons here. Chain size of 3, the prefix is prop. or prop, sorry, excuse me. Then over here on this side, we have our suffix, which is based on our functional group. It's not an alkane because there aren't all single bonds. It's not an alkene, there's no double bond. It's an alkyne because there's a triple bond. So the suffix that we're going to be using is YNE. Draw some arrows as well. Propyne is the name of this chemical. Now I'm going to do one more. It's going to be an alkene, so there's going to be a double bond on this one, and there's going to be a chain of 4 carbons. So 4 carbons, one with a double bond. What I then have to do is fill out my hydrogen again because we're drawing the structure. I'm going to name my carbons again. Oops, excuse me, that's not number 2, that's number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So carbon 1, 2, 3, and 4. Our first carbon already has 2 bonds, so we only need to add on 2 more hydrogens. Our second carbon has 3 bonds around, so we only have to add 1 more hydrogen to make 4 bonds. Third carbon has 2 bonds already, so we add in 2 more hydrogens. And our last carbon has 1 bond only, so we add 3 hydrogens at the end. Again, we're continuing to practice drawing our structures, but the whole point of this exercise is to name it as well. So first thing we do is we look at the chain size. There is a chain of 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons, which means that we're using this prefix here, bute, not but, bute. And then we have to look at our functional group to decide what suffix to use. We have our E double bond, meaning that it is an alkene. So we are going to use the ENE. And I've just realized that I've drawn my arrows to the structure, not to the name, but you get the idea. The name down the bottom, B-U-T, bute, E-N-E for the double bond, butene is the name of this chemical. Now there's one more video that I'm going to be putting down in this set. It's going to start to talk about, well, how do we name a chemical if this double bond here is sitting somewhere else along the chain? What if it's not sitting at the end? They would both be butene, but there's a slight variation that we do to the naming system so that it's very clear what kind of structure we're drawing. But I'll get to that in the next one. Cheers.